Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today. We are really happy that you're here because this topic is not only about AI, as you see on the screen, it is about people. And today we will look at how to use AI with intention so that we can support our learners, our students, in building those dialogue skills that are going to keep their relationships at the center and of course that are going to protect their authentic voice. Lorenzo?
Yes. So AI can help us engage in dialogue, but it should never replace what is human in communication. In this session will be an opportunity to explore how AI can be used thoughtfully to enhance empathy, understanding, and authentic expression. As we begin, keep in mind one central idea. We use AI to strengthen dialogue and not to replace it.
And before we begin, we would like to introduce ourselves. My name is Angelica Santana Fierro. I am connecting from Mexico, and I am an education and quality consultant at Generation Global, which is part of the International Baccalaureate Organization. I design content, learning experiences, and resources for educators and for learners in our program. And with me today is my colleague, Lorenzo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lorenzo, and I am the digital and monitoring and evaluation lead at Generation Global. So I support the design and the implementation of our digital learning platforms and also oversee how we measure and evaluate the impact of our program around the world. So let's take a quick look at what we'll explore together in the next hour. First, we will explore why AI matters in dialogic education and how it can help learners prepare for meaningful conversations. We'll then examine the ethical aspects of AI, focusing on bias, authenticity, and student integrity. We'll also share practical approaches that teachers are already using to help students engage thoughtfully with AI. And finally, we'll learn about the voice framework, something that we've developed, which offers some principles for using AI to support authentic dialogue. And by the end of the session, hopefully we'll leave with some concrete ideas you can apply directly in your classroom or learning environment. But just before we begin, a quick word on Generation Global and what it is. So Generation Global is the global citizenship education program of the International Baccalaureate. Our mission is to help young people develop the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that they need to thrive in a diverse and interconnected world. Through structured dialogue, learners engage with real global issues and practice key skills such as active listening, global communication, and critical thinking. The program is completely free for IB and also non-IB schools and connects young people around the world through our online platform and live facilitated video conferences. So Generation Global creates opportunities for students to explore diverse perspectives, build future-ready skills, and take part in authentic dialogue that broadens their worldview.
And it is important to share with you that, well, the topic of this webinar is AI and dialogue, and that is why it's very important that we introduce you to dialogue and its 5 core skills that you see here on the screen. So in our program, we enhance and work around those 5 core skills, which is global communication, in which we try to help students speak authentically and respect differences across borders. We also work around critical thinking, helping them analyze, evaluate, and interpret ideas. Also questioning, learning how to ask deeper questions. Active listening, of course, which is a basic dialogue skill. Understanding, empathizing, recognizing others. And of course, reflection, which is based on assess and learn and grow from experience. So these are the 5 core skills that are the heart of our program here at Generation Global. And together, they prepare young people to be active global citizens and to have meaningful conversations and, of course, collaborate across cultures. So that is why it's super important that we set up the tone for what dialogue means here at Generation Global and how now we are going to connect it with artificial intelligence, right? Let us begin quickly with an activity. Now, for this activity, we're going to use the chat. And in one sentence, we would like you to type your response for the following statement. It says, a good use of AI for dialogue is, and then you can write what it is for you, because, and then you can write the purpose. Now, it is very important that when you are thinking about AI and dialogue, you have a clear purpose as an educator, right? Because we need to know why are we using AI, right? Like what is the purpose that comes to our mind? How can we guide our students to use it responsibly? So it is important also that we have that clear purpose because it would keep us focused on human-centered dialogue, not just technology per se. So let us start sharing this sentence and take a look at your responses.
So I see already some good ones. So but Saida says a good use of AI for dialogue is to research because you have the information you need within a conversation based on questions. Let's see.
I like this one that says a good dialogue of AI. A good use of AI for dialogue is creating realistic conversations because it makes learning more engaging. And that's from Mohammed. So good. I mean, you're also talking about engagement and how important it is to have it when you're having an authentic dialogue, an authentic conversation, right?
Also like Preeti's sentence. So a good use of AI for dialogue is brainstorming because it helps generate ideas, diverse ideas quickly and interactively. And yes, that's, for example, one of the things that we'll see in a second.
Yeah. And I see another one here by Mark. He says, a good use of AI for dialogue is to practice asking the right questions because it will help with inquiry and curiosity. Of course, and now that we introduced, right, also like questioning as a dialogue skill, how can you use AI to help your students ask better questions to go deeper into dialogue? So these are great answers. And you're also including those dialogue skills that we talk about.
Okay, thanks everyone for participating and keep putting, sentences in the chat. It's very fascinating and very interesting to see what all your thoughts are on this. So we've talked a little bit about Generation Global and sort of how we facilitate these dialogue encounters. And in particular, we have two main spaces where we have these opportunities for dialogue. So one is what we call dialogue spaces. And so these are online spaces where students take part in asynchronous written exchanges, supported by some specific features that we've developed to promote thoughtful interaction, and we'll see some of these in a bit. And also video conferences. So these are live facilitated encounters lasting an hour between young people from different countries. And we use AI to keep humans at the center. We use it to start and strengthen peer-to-peer dialogue and not to replace it. AI can help students expand awareness by exposing them to new perspectives and voices in a safe environment. It promotes critical thinking by encouraging learners to verify information and identify bias. It helps scaffold questioning as AI can model deeper Socratic style follow-ups. And it also lowers the barriers for participation, helping quieter and multilingual students organize their ideas and build confidence. So use this way, AI strengthens human dialogue instead of replacing it. So we've explored some of the ways in which AI can be helpful in dialogue, but at the same time, it's important to be aware of some of the risks and also explore ethical questions around the use of AI. So whilst we won't go into too many technical details, it's important to understand that AI systems are trained on very large data sets. And this means as well that they are inherently biased. So there is a process of selection of the sources on which these AI models are trained on. And therefore, some information may be missing and certain perspectives may not be represented in the training data sets. And this affects the responses that AI generates. So whilst AI can be very helpful, it's important to know that it's not neutral. And bias from AI and its impact can also pop up in more or less subtle ways in our everyday lives. So an example that many talk about is, for example, language bias. And, you know, the majority of us has already probably used AI chatbots by now. ChatGPT has been the fastest growing product ever. So it only took them 2 months since the launch in November 2022 to reach 100 million people. Now it has over 800 million weekly active users. And so this incredible widespread use in such a rapid time had consequences in our culture. So you might have noticed that AI chatbots tend to overrepresent some words, for example, delve. And so researchers trace this back to the training process of these AI models. So much of the labor of preparing the data sets used to train the models was outsourced by OpenAI to what's called annotators, mainly in Kenya and Nigeria, where delve is used more frequently. And so, but what happened as well is that this has now started to affect global culture. So 2 years after the release of ChatGPT, a study saw an increase of 10 times, in the use of the word delve in scientific papers, as researchers use AI to help them write their papers. But now the most recent thing is that there's new evidence that this overuse of words like delve is bleeding into regular language. So there's a new research by Scientific American that found that people are saying delve more in spontaneous spoken conversations. So that means that we're internalizing the AI biases and repeating them ourselves. And this process is only going to accelerate as it will be increasingly more difficult to distinguish between AI speech, human speech influenced by AI, and just regular human speech. As these lines will keep on blurring, we'll keep also subconsciously replicating the language that we see and keep talking a little bit more like these chatbots as a result. And so this is a subtle but powerful way in which AI can reshape and influence culture without us necessarily realizing it. So we thought we could just do a very quick activity to test your instincts. So will help us reflect a little bit on how blurred the line is between human and AI, content generation. So we've prepared these 2 posts. Actually, this in our platform for students, which we call the Ultimate Dialogue Adventure, we offer a number of topics that students can decide to complete. We have around 20 topics on global issues. And then we ask them to practice dialogue in the corresponding dialogue spaces, which was, I was mentioning earlier, these asynchronous dialogue spaces. So this would be how a post in a dialogue space would look like. And so here we have 2 examples of posts. One was written by a human, and then another one was AI generated. So let's see if you can spot which one of these 2 is AI generated. So we'll give you a little bit of time to read through these posts, and then we'll put up a quick poll, just to get a sense of, you know, which one you think is AI generated of the two.
And you know,
So
Lorenzo, it's, it's super interesting to read the replies in the chat and what they're, I mean, they're actually cutting some very nice tricks around this already, just by using, you know, by observing and taking a look. And yeah, probably as educators, you do that when you receive essays and papers, and you need to read about that. And you probably already have, you know, the eye for detecting AI, although sometimes it might be super complex as well, right? So let's take a look at the poll and see. I see the numbers moving, and pretty much everyone is saying, like, I think post
yeah.
two, the more
Okay,
real.
so the majority is saying post to around 85%. I'll just end the poll now. So 85% says post two. And let's go for the reveal. You're right. So it is post two that is AI generated. So well done. But you know, it's interesting, in the chat I also saw quite a few say post one. So it seems that at the moment, you know, people can still spot which one is AI generated, but I think it will be increasingly difficult, you know, over the next few years. And interestingly, there was a tweet just a few days ago by Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, saying that, you know, if you now specify in your instructions for ChatGPT not to use M dashes, now it will respect that and not use them. So that probably was one of the potential signs of AI generation. Although, you know, it's impossible to mathematically prove that a text was generated by AI. So whilst these things like the overuse of delve and the M dash might signal that something is AI generated, we cannot be certain. We cannot be for sure that something is being generated by AI. But yeah, well done. And you know, this is a very interesting reflection on you know, how these lines will keep on blurring between AI generated content and human content. So let's now just take a moment to look at some ethical considerations that can support sort of a more considerate use of AI in education. So the first one is around bias and stereotyping. As we've seen earlier, although AI is trained on massive data sets, there is still that selection process. And so some voices and perspectives might be missing. And so this invites us to ask whose stories, cultures, and perspectives are being left out. Another one is around privacy. So it's important to consider how the data that we feed into these AI tools is stored, accessed, and then used further. They say to improve the model, but we cannot be 100% sure about how that data is being used. So we should all reflect on what we're comfortable sharing with AI tools, and also refrain from, you know, if possible, sharing too much personal information. And also we model this by just being transparent ourselves in the use of these AI tools. And so another one, for example, is to encourage students to label AI assisted work when possible. And this simple act builds on honesty and accountability. Finally, authenticity. So AI can generate ideas, but the human learner must decide what to keep and how to make it their own. So by focusing on these principles, we help students use AI with integrity and reflection. Also, just these are some examples of sort of ongoing AI ethics debates. So there was an interesting paper published in Nature very recently showing how human to AI interactions create a bias amplification feedback loop. So small biases in the training data used by these AI models are amplified by the AI models, which then feed back into human judgments. So people repeatedly exposed to biased AI outputs become more systematically biased over time. And this effect is stronger than in purely human-to-human, conversations, influence chains, because AI applies bias consistently and with low noise. And people also tend to overweight AI as a reliable epistemic authority. We talked about the importance of transparency, and so we're seeing some for example, the EU Commission working on guidance around the labeling of AI-generated content. There's also ongoing debates around the use of AI for security reasons, for example, using biometric identification in public spaces with real-time facial recognition. It's interesting to see how different countries are taking different stances as well. So the EU, for example, has taken a very strong stance prohibiting the use of AI for this specifically, for real-time facial recognition in the AI Act. Other countries have taken different approaches. For example, police in the UK is using AI for facial recognition in public places, but had to backtrack on using it for some events. For example, the Notting Hill Carnival earlier this year, after campaigners brought some evidence that it was inherently racially biased. And then lastly, we've mentioned the importance of reflecting on the privacy aspect of using AI tools. And so there's a massive issue in a lot of professions with people entering a great deal of confidential or even statutory protected information like medical data, with doctors entering patient information in chatbots to get ideas or seek confirmation. But even when AI works well, we need to be careful how we use it. So over-reliance on AI can lead to what's been called cognitive offloading. So that's when students, but any of us really, over-rely on AI, with it taking over part of our thinking. So when students use AI to generate ideas before they've explored their own thinking, it can actually get in the way of learning. And so they're collecting just ready-made answers rather than testing or developing their own. It's like skipping the thinking part of a task. So that's why we need to be mindful about when we introduce AI and what stage students are in their inquiry. Over-reliance on AI can also lead to what's been called sometimes mechanized convergence. So when a lot of people use the same tools with similar prompts, in this case, we start seeing the same kind of answers. So everyone starts sounding the same, but not because we think alike, but because AI tools flatten their responses. So the risk is that fewer new ideas get generated, and that could limit originality and voice. It also means that people might miss the chance to learn from each other's thinking. And so as educators, we need to design tasks that leave space for some real variation, and then create time to talk with students about how they're thinking, not just what they've produced. There's also some other risks, like unequal access to these tools or the environmental impact of these large language models.
And now that Lorenzo has described us some of the key ethical considerations and, of course, broader risks, and I was reading in the chat, and actually there's a word that was, shared a couple of times, and that's authenticity. And when we talk about authenticity, and when we talk about being educators, and when we reflect on how are we going to use AI, and how are we going to help our students use it in a better way, right? We need to think about what we see in this slide, right? So which is acceptable and which is unacceptable. And this is simple, right? This is simple, but still is a powerful principle. AI should support learning. It should not replace it, right? So it is going to be acceptable when it helps the students explore ideas and maybe understand something more clearly, right? But it's not going to be acceptable, or it becomes unacceptable, when it is used to pretend they did work they need not actually do. So here's a very big difference, right? So now that if you're part of the IB network, perhaps you already know the academic integrity policy, and especially I'm referring to Appendix 6, which is the guidance on the use of AI intelligence tools. So if you're not familiarized with that, you can actually download this from the resources tab here on Zoom. And I would also invite you to visit the IB Exchange events page, where you can watch 2 very helpful webinars on AI and the use of AI by Dr. Alison Navas. One is called Consistency and Clarity, Creating Shared AI Expectations Across Your School. And the other one is called Ethics in Action, Using IB AI Guidance to Build Student Integrity. So once again, talking about authenticity, talking about the benefits, talking about ethical considerations, and some of the broader risks. What can we do as educators, and which are those acceptable and unacceptable principles that we can keep? AI should support learning, right? Not replace it. So let's stay with that thought.
So we've seen how in Generation Global we have these 2 main spaces where we host dialogue, the dialogue spaces and video conferences. And so in the dialogues that we've hosted, we've observed students using AI creatively and positively, illustrating how it can support and enhance dialogue. So they use it to fact check information and to translate or rephrase ideas, which supports clearer communication and also helps multilingual students participate more confidently. Another common use that we've seen is for clarifying thoughts and structure, so allowing students to organize their ideas better before sharing them in a dialogue. And finally, some learners are using AI to practice respectful disagreement, testing how to express their perspectives thoughtfully and constructively. So our role as educators is to help students reflect on how these uses of AI can strengthen understanding rather than replace their own thinking and voice. So for this reason, we also intervene when we see an obvious misuse of AI in dialogue, where AI is no longer helping students to engage, but it's replacing their own ideas. And so when we see these instances, we email students and we make it a teaching opportunity. We also provide a dedicated AI tool in the platform, so developed specifically to support students to engage in dialogue with their peers. So when enabled, it provides contextual sentence starters based on the dialogue space that students are in and the existing dialogue thread. So you can see here, one of the features that we have specifically to support dialogue is whenever someone is going to respond to another student, they need to select one of what we call actions. So, do I want to reflect on what the student has said, or do I want to ask them a question based on what they have said? Do I want to respectfully challenge their perspective, or do I want to share something from my experience? And so we also leverage the information about which action students want to perform, one of these 4, when responding to someone, to provide these contextual sentence starters that are always by design incomplete, because we want students to really make them their own, and they're just a way to potentially begin thinking about how to respond, but we want them to actually then obviously fill in the rest of the sentence with their experience, their perspective, their thoughts. And so we've just explored some of the ways in which people are using AI to support dialogue at Generation Global, and how we're also using AI to support them. And to make sure that AI helps students and does not take the place of their authentic voices, let's have a look at the voice framework. It's a simple guide to using AI in dialogue in an ethical and meaningful way.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And I think this is like the core of this webinar, because as educators, you know that AI is already commonly used. This is part of the everyday life of students, right? And maybe having guidance, not having enough guidance, not knowing how to use AI properly, but still they have the tool in their phones, it's everywhere. And so now thinking about how to preserve that authenticity, how to still keep humans at the center instead of technology, how to take care of the dialogue skills in particular, and some other very important skills such as critical thinking. We're going to learn how to use each one of the elements in this voice framework, because we do need to support and think of creative ways to improve critical thinking, to bring open-mindedness into the classroom, to go deeper when you ask questions and to think about how to frame them, right? To have the ability to prioritize the connection that we have as human beings, even looking at the eye, using the tone of your voice, being mindful of the words that you choose, and of course, reflecting on what you have learned. So we have created a Generation Global this framework, and each of the elements is going to represent an important part of preserving authenticity, right? And helping students use AI as a tool, as a company, right? But still using their own voice and their own skills, right? So let's take a look at each element. And we're going to begin with letter B, which is verify. And this is to help learners understand that AI is not always right? Sometimes, and we know this, it's going to show bias. You talked about this in the chat. Lorenzo mentioned that as a potential risk, of course. It misses important context. It even fabricates information if we're not aware. And if we don't go and look at the sources and do like double check and really analyze what it's given to us. So just let's do this in the let's use the emojis. So if you have heard your students say, "Oh, AI presented this to me. AI is right. AI is fully reliable," just use the thumbs up reaction. So it perhaps, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago we didn't have this issue, but now it's so common, and it comes like a discussion in class of like, yeah, but what is the source, right? How did you get to that conclusion? So as educators, we need to guide students to question what AI is producing and think critically about it. Because when we question AI openly, students are also going to learn that it's okay to double check, to not accept every answer as true. And this is what the V stands for, right? Verify. And we have thought about some guiding questions that could be, important for you to consider. And well, is how are you going to show your students that AI outputs must be questioned and not accepted as a fact? So perhaps thinking about that guiding question and really started to perhaps imagine, or even maybe sharing the chat, how are you doing that? How are you achieving that in the classroom? How are you making your students question? How are you making them stop and take a look at what's in front of them, and really go deeper in analyzing and doing some research and selecting better sources? And also, what are those classroom routines that will help the learners check evidence and bias? And perhaps that is something that it could be done so that our students do not over-rely on AI and do not consider it as the truth, right? So checking for evidence and checking for bias is also something that we should do as educators, and try to create activities inside of our own curriculum that guarantee that we're actually making them think, right? And use their critical thinking. We have also here 2 practical ways in which you could apply the verify element. The first, it could be to run a fact-checking activity where you have them use AI and then compare that information with trusted sources. So perhaps, I don't know, you're talking about biodiversity, right? And you want them to learn about a specific data, And of course, they're going to run into AI, an AI tool, and then perhaps they're going to use the internet to search, or a book, right, to search about an important concept. And that way they can compare, and they will have the ability to look and decide which are those trusted sources, and to even find that there might be bias or that there might be misinformation on what is presented to them. The second activity we propose is to use the RAVEN model, which stands for reputation, ability to observe, vested interest, expertise, and neutrality, to help them decide if the information is trustworthy. Now, for this activity, you can find it in one of our widely used resources, which is the Essentials of Dialogue. And if you go to page 52, you are going to find a description of this activity, and it will help learners see that thinking critically is an active process. And it is something that even if you are relying on AI, you should stop and do that, right? And how are we going to support that as educators? So perhaps thinking about those guiding questions as well.
And just to add, you can find the Essentials of Dialogue linked in the resources section here on Zoom. So you should be able to find a link that goes to our website, and then you'll be able to download it from there.
Yeah, thank you, Lorenzo. So now we go to letter O, which stands for open-mindedness. And open-mindedness is about helping learners use AI to widen their perspectives. So thinking about what we saw in bias and missing voices and the information that perhaps is brought to them when they gave a prompt and when they ask questions, we as educators need to guide them to respect difference. And of course, use AI to bring multiple voices, multiple perspectives, so that they have, they are in an inclusive space. And recognizing that there might be some voices that are not in that information, that are not going to be part of the conversation, and listening also as well, how to be able to think about what is missing from a curiosity perspective, but also from being respectful and open to those voices. And for that, we thought about two guiding questions. The first one, it's going to focus on preventing bias and exclusion when they use AI. So talking about the missing voices, right? And the second one reminds us that openness means valuing difference and not really seeking agreement. So let's take a look at the second question, which is, how can I show students that dialogue means openness to difference, not automatic agreement? Let's think about that question and share the answer in the chat. I think the second question, of course, already has critical thinking in it, which was the prior element, right, for be verify. So you're not automatically agreeing, but you're also looking for those things and that information that is missing, perhaps, right? Or perhaps your own voice is missing, right? So let's take a look at what you are sharing in the chat, specifically for this question before we move into the how to apply part. Let's see. Okay, Natalia says, AI models can be quite biased towards people pleasing, and you can ask it to be more neutral so that it doesn't just agree with you automatically. Yeah, so this is another part in which, as educators, you help your students see that, right? And it's perhaps is more how to create adequate prompts, but of course you need to think also about those ideas and those voices that might be missing, and that's also part of integrating the first element. So let's move into the, okay, I see another post here. It says, from bias, we need to help students understand that we are feeding the AI as well, of course, and this is what Lorenzo was sharing with us a couple of minutes ago. One of the common AI bias was gender bias. Students need to understand the questions and prompts they are using can affect the answers they get. Exactly. So this is part of learning as well, and of really giving our students the tool to understand what they are getting, what they are consuming, and what might be affecting their thought. Let's move into the how to apply part for open-mindedness. And of course, I mean, a very, very basic but powerful activity here is to encourage learners to reflect on where their ideas come from and what perspectives might be missing. And for that, we are sharing with you the What Influences Me activity. This one you can find also on page 52 of the Essentials of Dialogue. And as Lorenzo mentioned, you can download it here at our resources tab and take a look at the activity that is going to make them reflect, well, from where do I took this idea? What are the things that are influencing me to think like this? And so you really go back with them in the class and have them reflect on this specifically. And another helpful activity is to use AI to show multiple viewpoints on a topic. So in this sense, you can have students look at those perspectives and then share or have a dialogue about which voices might be missing or which ones are overrepresented. So it would also be an activity in which you can get students to analyze the information that is presented. So this is going to build awareness of diversity, of course, and it's going to help learners think in a global and inclusive way as part of being global citizens.
And now let's look at the I. So I stands for inquire. And so inquire focuses on curiosity and deeper thinking. And learners often use AI to get sort of fast results, but we can guide them to ask better questions. So encourage them to use AI as a tool for exploration rather than a shortcut for answers. And serve as the guiding questions that we've developed around inquire. We have these two questions. So how can I help learners use AI as a co-inquirer, not just as an answer machine? And how do I help learners balance AI support with their own creative thought? So these two questions focus on the balance between AI assistance and human creativity. So we can teach students to use AI collaboratively where it sparks inquiry without limiting imagination. And this prepares them to engage with AI as a reflective, independent thinker. So perhaps we can get some emoji reactions around the second question, and if actually it's not the first question around the co-inquirer. So if you're already using AI as a co-inquirer, let us know with some thumbs ups or thumbs downs if you're not using AI as a co-inquirer. Okay. And as how to apply this, we've thought of two ways. So the first one is more about Generation Global in particular our video conferences. So one idea is before a video conference, you can ask students to use AI to brainstorm questions that they would like to know more about, so they come better prepared, and then use AI to the second one is sort of more general, and it would be to use AI to form open-ended questions that encourage students to respond with personal reflection and an additional question of their own to go deeper in the conversation. We also have a dedicated activity called Asking Response Questions, again found in the Essentials of Dialogue, but in page 28. So hopefully we're able to get it. And then you'll find it there. So these activities will help learner enter conversation prepared, curious, and ready to think critically. C stands for connect. Oh, let me fix the slides, just a sec. Hopefully, yeah, it's fine now. So C stands for connect, and connect reminds us that the dialogue is ultimately human. So AI can help with translation or generating ideas, but empathy, listening, and connection must stay central. So the goal is to use AI as a bridge to understanding, not as a substitute for real conversations. And these are some of the guiding questions for Connect. And these questions help us keep focus on the human aspect of learning. So they remind us to evaluate how AI is being used. So perhaps we can again ask the chat, if you want to share in what ways can AI support rather than limit the connection learners build with each other. So let's reflect a little bit on this, and perhaps you could share some thoughts on how AI can support rather than limit the connection that learners can build with each other. Also, I'm seeing some people that were not able to download the resource. I've put a direct link. I can put it again. So hopefully you can use that to download the essentials of dialogue. Okay. Okay, yeah. Some people were able to get it. Okay. Well, perhaps something you can think about, even after this. So in what ways can AI support rather than limit the connections that learners build with each other? And as the ways to apply this, we've thought of these. So use AI as a translation tool, so students from different languages and cultures can participate in the dialogue spaces, in particular for Generation Global. And another way would be to use AI to suggest ideas to learners so that they can explore them further in their conversation with peers. And so AI can help make dialogue more inclusive, and also using AI as a translation tool would allow people from different languages and cultural backgrounds to participate on equal ground. So there is the opportunity to reduce the language barriers and help students understand each other more clearly. And both of these approaches, so using AI as a translation tool, but also to suggest ideas, can make dialogue spaces more open, collaborative, and culturally connected.
Now we are reaching the last element of the voice framework, which is examine self. And this is about reflection, right? So learners are going to need time to reflect on how AI is shaping their learning, is shaping their voice, and even their identity, right? So are we giving them enough time to reflect? Do they have an opportunity to really think on the impact that they're having? We know that AI can support learning, but of course, it should not shape who they are. It should not replace their ideas or their voices. As educators, we can create activities that are going to highlight the personal values, that are going to use the creativity that our students have, that are going to focus on authenticity so that they go beyond AI, and that we are giving them also the space to reflect on the impact, right? And to think about it clearly. And for this, we have two guiding questions. Those questions are going to be focused on awareness and are going to be focused on balance. And the first question says, how do I guide learners to notice when AI helps versus hinders authenticity? So how do I guide them, right? The second question is, am I reinforcing the human advantage, such as creativity, judgment, and empathy? And we know that AI cannot replicate empathy, creativity, critical judgment. So am I also reinforcing that there's a human advantage to it? Am I creating the right activities or the space for reflection so that we take a look at the human advantage? And we have two activities on how to apply examine self. So the first one, it can be called My Voice versus AI. And in this sense, the learners can create two responses. One, perhaps they use AI, and the other one, they write it in their own words, and then compare, and then reflect on which one feels and seems more authentic. And perhaps there's a value in doing this activity, right? And perhaps they are doing it in a team, or they are doing it as a pair activity. And they're able to reflect on the answers and just notice what is missing, right? You can also use AI to generate reflection questions. Perhaps you have an activity, or perhaps you have a dialogue-centered activity, another learning experience, and you want reflection questions for them to think about their performance, to think about their learning outcomes. And that's also a good way that students can use AI to reflect. So these activities are going to build awareness, but are also going to help learners strengthen their voice. And now that we have seen the 5 elements of the voice framework, in this slide, you can see that there are 5 very important questions. For V, which is verify, what information must be checked? For O, that is open-mindedness, whose voices are missing? How am I going to include it, right? Am I aware that there are voices missing, that there are bias, perhaps? For I, which is inquire, what questions can we ask to go deeper? So once again, critical thinking, analyzing, using that to go and find a good question that I can ask that is going to take me deeper. For C, which is connect, what could be said in response to the person so that they don't lose that human contact, right? And for E, which is examine self, what could be kept or changed to keep voices authentic? So what is missing, what is better, right? And also preserving the human advantage. So these guiding questions can be used across subjects. I saw one question specifically of music. So these are questions that can be used in any subject, in any activity that is related with AI to some extent or not. This is not only a framework, but it can be used as a mindset, right? That are going to help our learners keep meaningful and human and valuable reflections and dialogue in this particular case. So you are also going to find in the resources tab 2 infographics. One is the voice framework for learners, and the other one is the voice framework for educators. You can download them and you can share them with your students and use them in your classroom. So now to close our session, we're going to take a moment and we're going to participate in a Zoom poll.
Yes, so let me just start the poll, which is this one, just to get a sense of sort of which voice element you plan to use first, to apply first. So let's see. I am seeing quite a few questions come in. It's quite balanced, I would say.
Yeah. I
Looks
think
like
people
verify and
verify.
open-mindedness at the moment are more relevant for people.
Yeah. And perhaps if you are going to choose one of those elements first, then think about the other ones that you might use later, right? And how can you bring those elements into your own classroom setting, into your own classroom activities. Perhaps you're going to use the ones we suggested, but still try to think about those questions that are going to help us once again center on authenticity and be aware of what is our role as educators when it comes to the use of AI.
Yeah, and also just remember, each of these elements is just a starting point to make AI more meaningful in dialogue and in learning.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing your answers. And as we finish, let us leave with this question, some sort of like a food for thought. How do I keep relationships and trust? I think that is a key word, right? And trust at the center of dialogue work. No matter how technology advances, no matter what's coming next year, dialogue and relationships and connections are still central, right? And more in that special age, right? When we have students that are young and that are still working on their own skills, their own identity. So AI, of course, is going to support our work. But when we talk about trust, when we talk about empathy, when we talk about integrity, when we talk about human connection, that's what's really meaningful. So how am I as educator going to keep that at the center? And we are sharing in this last slide our link to the teacher portal. The teacher portal is where you can find all of our free materials and resources, some ready-to-use activities, and also you can share the second link, which is adventuregeneration.global, with your students. It is also an app. It is called the Ultimate Dialogue Adventure, and there's a new topic, actually, that's been released this week. Is the newest edition, and it's called Artificial Intelligence. So probably you might want to go and check out, create an account. And of course, Lorenzo and I would like to thank you for your very, very active participation and for joining today's session. And of course, appreciating the thoughtful work that you do to empower learners.
Yes, thanks everyone for being so active in the chat and with the emojis. And so we hope that the webinar has inspired new ways to use AI intentionally and keep human voice at the heart of dialogue. So please stay connected with Generation Global. We have the links here, and continue exploring resources and opportunities for your students. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.